You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back.
Did I do it right?
You did. You said your name correctly. It's another...
I feel like I said it way too chipper to overcompensate.
That's me every time I do the intro. You're listening to The Tales We Tell. Anyways, I have two announcements. The first one is I told Austin, who is our trivia host at Pinky's, that I would shout out the trivia because he was very kind and made an announcement about the show last week at trivia. So if anyone's in the New Bern area, Pinky's Pub does trivia on Tuesday nights at 7:30 with Austin. Usually, sometimes Natasha is the host, and it's very fun. And there are
It is very fun.
cash-ish prizes.
Bar tab.
Yeah, bar tab. And sometimes there's candy if you're doing well. So there's that.
And even if you aren't doing well, the teams that are doing well tend to share.
Sometimes they share, yeah. And then my second announcement is just that I got a lot of the information. Well, I got part of the information for this episode from a 2-part Stuff You Should Know episode, which I'll name later. So I'm not giving away the whole plot. But I've linked that in the show notes. So if you want a good other podcast to listen to. And I find Josh and Chuck's voices to be soothing, so... All right, we ready?
Did you want one more hype up of the live show?
Yeah, why don't you say it?
It's Wednesday, June 26th at 7:30 at Pinky's Pub, the pub upstairs in downtown New Bern, North Carolina.
Yep.
It's free. We'll see you there.
Yes, with cheap drinks and cheapish food. Mm-hmm. I told you about the tomato pie, right? You
did. And we'll also go ahead and mention again, because I realized I have to implement this into my end of episode spiel. Mm-hmm. But I'm not ready to do that, so I'm going to do it now.
Okay.
Reminder that we are on YouTube, so that's just another way to listen to us. Just go to YouTube, search the Tales We Tell podcast. Mm-hmm. You'll find us, and even if you're like, I listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever it is. Whatever way you're listening now, you don't have to change and go and listen on YouTube.
Yeah.
However, if you could just pop over to YouTube, find us, and subscribe.
Yep.
That would be very helpple.
Yeah.
Because the more subscribers we have, the more, popular and more circulated it gets.
Yeah.
We go higher on the algorithm or
Yay.
whatever. So, yeah. If you've got an account with YouTube, just go hit subscribe. It makes our life easier.
And if for some reason, Morgan was listening, she's been now listening because she can listen on YouTube. She told me that one of the episodes was missing, and it was, of course, the second part of a 2-parter. So I got to go figure out what that is because it's all automatic. But if you come across something like that, let us know. And I'll try to fix it.
Yeah, especially if you're like, you know what, I'm looking to go back and re-listen from the beginning.
Yeah.
Go listen on YouTube.
There you go. Yeah. She was listening to I think it was I don't remember what we called it. Oh, the West Memphis 3. Mm-hmm. The one where that little boy was, I think it was just one little boy was killed, and then they convicted those 3 teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were into, heavy metal music. She got through part 1, which is just all the bad stuff. There wasn't a part 2 for it. I was like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I can tell you how it ends, but it's not great. Oh my gosh. All right, well, ready? This is an unsolved mystery today.
Cool.
Great. All right, so we're going back.
Just what I need, more unresolved feelings.
I know. Sorry. But again, this was my problem for the last 3 days, so now I have to make it everyone else's problem. Okay, so we're going back to 1982, September 29th, which is a Wednesday, and we are going to be in Elk Grove Village, which I believe is a suburb of Chicago. So we're up north, obviously we're in Illinois. Like, where else would we be? Good grief.
Ohio.
We don't do anything in Ohio.
I thought we did lots of things in Ohio.
You're thinking of Illinois. That's where
all those states are the same to me.
Illinois is cursed. I don't know what's happening up there. Okay. If you want, your first picture is of Mary Kellerman, who is 12. Sorry.
No.
I know. So she lived with her parents. She was an only child.
Cute little tomboy, at least in that
I
picture.
know. It's very cute. So she was a 7th grader at Jane Addams Junior High. And she was like a very normal 7th grader. Like, she would babysit for the kids in the neighborhood. She was in horseback riding, whatever. So on this Wednesday morning, she wakes up pretty early and is getting a cold. She has a sore throat and a runny nose. And it's just before 7 a.m. So she goes and tells her parents, and they're like, take this Tylenol, and I don't know if they said go back to bed, but they said, take this, you'll feel better. And her mom had just bought the bottle the day before, so, whatever. It's extra strength Tylenol. So.
Do I know this story?
I don't know. So her dad said later that he heard her go into the bathroom to take the medicine, and then he heard something drop. And he went to check on her, and he found her lying on the bathroom floor, unresponsive. Obviously, they call paramedics. They rush her to the hospital, but unfortunately, she is pronounced dead at 9:56. So, just a couple hours later.
Yeah, let's just heap on my anxiety right now.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I have a section at the very end that says silver lining ? So there's the tiniest bit of good at the end.
It's just, now having a kid,
I know.
Just.
This is a really specific thing, though, so you don't have to worry about it. Well, it's okay. So at the hospital, initially they thought her cause of death was a stroke because she didn't have any other health problems. She's a healthy 12-year-old girl. They don't just drop dead.
Nope.
And it's early, so they're like, maybe a stroke. I don't know. A little later on in the day, a man named Adam Janis, who is your next picture, he is, just keep your dossier out. He's 27. He is a postal worker in Arlington Heights, which is just 7 miles north of Mary's neighborhood. He was a Polish immigrant, and he was married to a woman named Teresa, and they had 2 children. I never got the name of the boy, who I think was the older one, but their daughter was named Kasia.
No.
And she was 4. Very sweet. And she said that she was like his little shadow. She would follow him everywhere. And he was picking her up from school today. He had called out sick from work because he felt like he was getting a cold. So not feeling great, but like well enough to like go pick up his kid. They stop at a local grocery store, Jewel Grocery. I don't know I've never heard of those, but I am sure people in Illinois have. He stops there, I think, just to get some groceries for lunch. And while he's there, he buys a bottle of extra strength Tylenol because he's got a headache. I know
this one.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
And I guess I can say now, in the 80s, I guess in the early 80s, Tylenol, I want to say it was like 30% of the over-the-counter like medication market was Tylenol, was Johnson & Johnson Tylenol. And people apparently just took it for everything. It was like, you have a headache, take some Tylenol. You're getting a cold.
What's the old cliche line? Take 2 Tylenol and call me in the morning?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just like, not like today where it could be like, oh, I've got cramps, I'm going to take ibuprofen. I've got a headache, I'm going to take Excedrin. I've got a sore throat, I'm going to take...
My joints
whatever.
are hurting, I'm going to take Aleve.
Yeah, this was more or less just you took Tylenol for whatever.
It was just a wide net.
Yes. They get home. Adam gets home with Kasia, and he has some lunch with his wife and is like, I've got this headache. I'm going to go ahead and take some Tylenol. he takes the Tylenol and then goes to lay down. And according to his wife, within seconds, he began to feel unwell. And very soon after that, he collapsed, either in the kitchen or the bedroom, unclear. But they rush him to the hospital, obviously. And according to Dr. Thomas Kim, who was the medical director of Northwest Community Hospital's ICU, he said, quote, "Our first job is to resuscitate, and we couldn't even do that. His heart just would not resuscitate." And he is pronounced dead at 3:15 p.m. And for him, they think maybe he had a heart attack. I think he was complaining of like mild chest pains earlier in the day, which honestly probably had to do with his cold.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they're like, I don't know. He was healthy, and he essentially went into cardiac arrest, and his heart wouldn't restart. So I don't know. A few minutes later, a woman named Mary Lynn Reiner, who's also 27.
Oh, wait, there's...
Oh, sorry. Skip past them.
Okay. But they're...
Put them on hold. Yeah.
There we go.
Here we go. So Mary Reiner lived in Winfield, which is another suburb. It's about 30 miles west of Chicago. She had just given birth a week before this to her fourth child. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So she hadn't been home from the hospital very long and wasn't feeling well. I don't know how it feels to have a baby.
You don't feel like yourself right
Probably
after.
not great. So around 3...
Especially if you've got 3 other kids
Yeah.
at home that you also have to start worrying about.
Yeah. That's true. So it was around 3:30 when she decided to take some extra strength Tylenol that she had purchased earlier that day. And very soon after taking it, she collapsed. And her husband, Ed, said that he came home like right after she had collapsed. So she's rushed to the Central DuPage Hospital, which is where she had given birth, which is just like the worst kind of irony. And when she gets there, she's in a comatose state, and they put her on life support. So she's holding on there. Back at the Janus household, Adam has passed away, and his family has kind of convened at his house. And his brother, Stanley, who's 25, and his wife, also named Teresa, she was 20. So they're there with the whole family. They were newlyweds. I don't think they'd been married a year. So obviously this is like probably the worst day of their lives. And both...
About to get a whole lot worse, too.
Yeah. Both Stanley and Teresa have headaches, and they're in Adam's house. And so I believe...
Early fall, allergies, like everyone is going to be getting a little bit sick.
Yeah. And so I believe it was Teresa that found some Tylenol that was in the house, the same bottle that Adam had taken his from. And she and Stanley both take 2. Both of them very quickly began complaining of chest pain, and then they collapsed like within minutes of each other. So obviously emergency services are called. Lieutenant Charles Kramer, who was with the Arlington Heights Fire Department, said that when he arrived, there were 8 paramedics working on them, so 4 on each person. And he said, quote, "Everything that would happen to the man happened to the woman a few minutes later." So their symptoms are the same.
Yeah. It's just he took the Tylenol first.
A little bit before her.
So literally, the paramedics could basically watch what's happening with him and be like, okay, he's about to start, he just started convulsing, she's going to start, we need to get her ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever it was. I don't know if she was convulsing, but...
Yes. So they both...
If it's what I think it is, then convulsions could happen.
Yes. It is.
Mm-hmm.
So they are taken to the hospital at 5:30 p.m. And Dr. Kim, the medical director from earlier, he was like, I was about to go home, and someone was like, oh, we're bringing in 2 people from the Janus family. like back to the hospital, and he was like, oh, was it like stress? Did they faint? Like from, grief or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they were like, no, it's something else. So he stays. He's like, I guess I'm not going home tonight.
Well, he's probably thinking like, oh, there might be some sort of weird epidemic or crazy outbreak. Like, if, I mean, it was a different hospital, I guess, than the others,
yeah, they don't know about. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but it's definitely noted that 3 people in the same family are having the same symptoms.
So it could be something environmental in the home, or it could be something that they've all now been exposed to, and yes. You want to stay on top of.
Yes.
Especially when it's we don't know what happened. They just collapsed, and now.
Yeah, like 3 healthy young people.
They dead or almost dead.
Yeah. In the Stuff You Should Know episode, I think it was Josh pointed out, he's like, the term that they like just drop dead, he's like, that doesn't actually happen very often. Like, it's very rare that someone just drops dead, especially
That's usually like an aneurysm.
Yeah, and it's usually not young people in their 20s who are otherwise healthy, or 12-year-old children. So definitely, I mean, honestly, everyone was probably taking note, but this was more obvious. When they get to the hospital, Stanley is pronounced dead shortly after they arrive, and Teresa is placed on life support. And initially, investigators, they like go back to the Janus house because they're like, something happened. Initially, they thought it might be carbon monoxide poisoning, like there's a leak in the house, which isn't a bad guess.
Yeah, it's weird that...
It's wrong.
I mean, like, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation usually is.
Not in this case.
No.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's why you always want to start out with what's the most likely thing.
Yeah.
And then rule it out.
Yeah.
And, keep ruling things out. Don't go for the crazy thing.
Yeah.
And there's also a phrase in medicine, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras.
Yeah.
Which is why the zebra is the symbol for EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
I did not know that.
Yeah. My sister-in-law has it.
Wow.
And so EDS is a syndrome. There's 14 different types, basically, within this syndrome. Basically, is a family.
Right.
And they present, similar but different. And it's very hard to diagnose. And her diagnosis journey was a years-long process. There was a time where they thought it might be Lyme disease.
Jeez. I was going to say, is it
or it could be this, or it could be that.
Yeah,
and
so some symptoms mirror other
issues
and or whatever, but not all of them.
Yeah, and it's but if you have this, you don't also have this, which she does have. Yeah. And so, these two things don't go together in this disease.
Yeah. I imagine it was a lot of you could have Lyme disease, and then this other symptom is probably just you're tired, or change your diet, or,
Also, she's a woman, and therefore...
That's what I was implying.
a lot of just being kind of disregarded by doctors, so a lot of second opinions of being sometimes women just have problems.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't care enough to find out. Take 2 Tylenol and call me in the morning.
Yeah. That was a good segue back. Good tie-in. Okay, back to this awful day.
So it's not carbon monoxide.
It's not carbon monoxide, correct. I'm sure people have guessed what it is, but I'm still going to hold out for my reveal. Okay, Mary McFarland, 31. She was a single mom of 2 children, and she was working at the Illinois Bell Telephone Company, I guess, in Lombard, which was between Winfield and Elk Grove Village, so same general area. She told her coworkers that she had a headache, and around 6:30, she took some extra strength Tylenol that she had in her purse. And a few minutes later, she collapsed. she was rushed to the hospital and also put on life support.
Also, women be tough as hell, because so far the only people to survive at least this long are the women.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not counting the young girl, because children don't... They're not quite as tough.
Yes. So at 8:15, so 6:30 is when she takes the medicine. She dies shortly after, or sorry, no, she's placed on life support. At 8:15 p.m., Teresa Janice is pronounced dead and taken off her life support. Paula Price, who's 35, she was a flight attendant with United Airlines. She lived in Old Town, Chicago, I think.
I can definitely see flight attendant.
I know, right? Isn't she?
It's the hair.
It's like,
and the big smile.
I know. I feel like she must have just been, just from that picture, she looks like one of those people with just like the kindest personality. I don't know.
I think flight attendant was definitely what she should have been, just based on this picture.
Yeah. So she is working. So she lands in O'Hare shortly after 9:00 p.m. And on her way home, she stopped at a Walgreens and bought a bottle of extra strength Tylenol. And she goes home, and we're going to put a pin in her for a minute. Because by this time, an investigator with the Cook County Medical Examiner named Nick Pichos, he had connected, I believe, the first 3 instances. It might just be the Janices, because I'm not sure if he knew about Mary, but at least the first 3 victims here. So I don't think she was a nurse at the hospital. I think she was a public health nurse, but she went with him and the police to the Janice home after Stanley and Teresa. And the nurse found the Tylenol bottle and noticed, I guess counted, and noticed that there were 6 pills missing. And she was like, 6 pills divided by 3 people, 2 pills each. That's normal dose. I'm just going to hold on to this. And, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, also that being like, if they were able to talk to the family, like, okay, what happened just before they collapsed? Like, we were just sitting around. He said he had a headache. He took some Tylenol and then went to go lay down and then collapsed.
Yeah.
Same story for like, so like when you hear take some Tylenol and then collapsed, she probably was like, this Tylenol bottle.
Yeah, let's look into this.
Let's hold on to this.
Yeah. And Pichos had noticed, I guess he did know about Mary Kellerman because he had her notes from the paramedics, and he noticed that they had documented that she had also taken Tylenol because they were very thorough and good at their jobs.
Good.
So he had someone go to the Kellerman house and grab that bottle of Tylenol. He compared it to the bottle from the Janice home, and the control numbers on the bottle were the same. He called the medical examiner's office and said, quote, everything here is different except for this, which, not true. Lots of things were the same. Everything here is different except this. Both have Tylenol bottles, and they both have the same control number. And the deputy medical examiner told him to open the bottles and smell them.
Did
Katy,
smell like almonds?
They did smell like almonds.
I'm
Take a drink.
Take a sip.
Okay, so if you have not guessed, the Tylenol was laced with
arsenic.
No.
Arsenic is almonds.
Cyanide.
Ah, damn it.
Sorry.
Damn it. That's right.
Oh, that would have been great.
Can we redo it?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Okay.
They don't, Jarek. You can save that for the bloopers. That doesn't go in the final episode.
Yes.
And if it does, it will punch you in the face.
Or in the balls.
No.
Kick him in the balls.
I can do that.
Okay.
Or what I could really do is come over one day when he's at work still and play his video games and mess up all his scores.
I don't know if his video games record scores, but that's a good idea.
I'll figure it out.
He called me his girl today, by the way, to his video game buddies. Like I said, so I asked him to be like,
I think that's
quiet
kind of cute.
It was actually kind of cute, but in the moment he was complaining, and he was like,
"Oh,
sorry,
God."
my girl's here too. And I was like, excuse me, do you mean your wife of almost 5 years? Grief. There was something kind of cute about it. Anyways, okay.
Yeah. In the moment, I could see that being irritating. But yeah, looking back.
Well, because then later he was like,
it's like, sweet. There's something about, like,
My
it
girl.
doesn't matter if you're just dating or if you've been married for 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're still his girl.
I know.
It's so
Well,
sweet.
and then later he was like, a few seconds later, he's like, no, yeah, man, my wife's here too. And I was like, oh, man, I'm back to being your wife. Okay. Never mind. Okay. So, how did we lead into it?
You're like, that's right. If you haven't guessed, it was laced with.
Okay. So, if you haven't guessed yet, the Tylenol was laced with
Cyanide!
cyanide, which now I'm going to tell you a little bit about cyanide. It's terrifying. So, it is a highly toxic substance that can be found in some foods, such as almonds.
Mm-hmm. Hence why it smells like almond.
Hence the almond smell. According to the National Library of Science, quote, it is readily available, highly lethal, and easily weaponized.
Not at all terrifying.
Not at all terrifying.
Yeah, and before anyone freaks out about the fact that there's cyanide in almonds, the sheer volume of almonds that you would have to eat in order to have any kind of ill effects of cyanide, I mean,
A lot.
it's not possible.
Yeah, you're not. It's like the amount of weed you'd have to smoke to have any effect on your glaucoma. It's not. All you would be doing is eating almonds or smoking weed.
Two different very end goals there.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, you die because you killed yourself.
Yes.
I can't eat another almond. Sorry, my brain is in a dark place right now.
Oh, that's okay, because my next fact is that as a gas, cyanide was used in extermination camps during the Holocaust. Sorry. Also, as a gas, it was used as a form of capital punishment. Hi, Sam. In case you haven't listened to all 6 of our Alcatraz episodes, Sam Shockley was unjustly executed by the gas chamber, which was like one of the most inhumane forms of capital punishment, and not dissimilar to nitrogen gas, which Alabama is doing. So as a salt or liquid, cyanide has been used to cause suicides because it's so quick acting. So several Nazis took their own lives this way.
That's like in spy movies and whatnot. Mm-hmm. You catch up to the bad guy and they chomp down on a cyanide capsule.
Yeah, one of the things was pilots. I think it was American pilots during some secret World War II situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were told to carry them in their mouths.
Yep.
And then if
they're captured,
to bite down.
You bite down because
I would be so scared carrying. What if you jostle the plane?
I accidentally bite the crap out of my lip all the time. Like, I've got swollen spots right now on the inside of my lip from just existing and accidentally just.
I'd be like, what if we keep it in my pocket and I'll just be really quick about getting it out?
What if, just, attach it to like a pendant or something on a necklace. That's that way, even if your hands are tied behind your back, you can reach down, grab the pendant, and.
Yes, that's a much better plan.
But yeah, basically it's, death before capture.
Yes. Alan Turing allegedly died of cyanide poisoning. I say alleged. He died of cyanide poisoning, allegedly self-inflicted, but that is, I think, controversial. And then the Jonestown Massacre. That was cyanide that killed like 900 people. Yikes. Okay.
The Kool-Aid.
Yes. The Flavor-Aid. That's what it was.
Oh, that's right. Flavor-Aid.
Flavor-Aid. So, what...
So, when they say don't drink the Kool-Aid, the Kool-Aid's fine.
Kool-Aid's fine. Don't drink the Flavor-Aid.
Don't drink the Flavor-Aid.
The wine is fine, though. this $5 wine. Sorry, $10 wine that's on sale.
I would have collapsed by now anyway.
It's true. So, cyanide, if inhaled, will cause death in seconds. If ingested or otherwise exposed, minutes. I mean, obviously, if it's like a long, slow exposure, longer than that. But the way it kills you is asphyxiation of cells. So it makes it so that your cells can't use oxygen. Ultimately, it'll eventually cause cardiac arrest, but before that, you can have weakness, dizziness, difficulty breathing, seizures, coma, all sorts of stuff. But something they pointed out in Stuff You Should Know is that one of the reasons it's such a horrible way to die, aka not a humane form of capital punishment, is because, like, while you're still conscious, you're breathing oxygen. Like, you're breathing, but nothing's happening, which is wild to me. And they said that you probably experience about a minute of this, like, panicked,
like,
I'm breathing and nothing's happening.
Like getting the wind knocked out of you, where you're trying to inhale and inhale and inhale, and you can't breathe, and that's the panic starts to build, and you're like,
yeah,
this is how I die.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately. Apparently it can be difficult to diagnose. I think you need a blood test to do it. And like we were saying earlier, the symptoms can be mistaken for other causes of death. So heart attack, stroke, etc.
Luckily, though, all of these, I don't want to say luckily, that sounds bad, but for all these people, though, that were young and otherwise healthy, with no, like, history of heart conditions, or the fact, the idea of them having a heart attack or something similar to, what cyanide poisoning presents as, is very unlikely.
Yes.
So they could be like,
reason to investigate.
Could be a heart attack, but even if it was, we need to go and look and make sure, like, go ahead and open up that bad boy's chest and look for blockages or anything that might have caused this heart attack.
And, like, I think it's so weird that they don't I don't know. I think it's weird that they don't perform autopsies on everyone, because
that would take a lot of time.
I know, but
there are not enough Emmys out there.
I guess. I mean, how do you? Okay, here's a question. Maybe you don't know the answer to.
Okay, well, what about the people who died from a gunshot wound to the head? Do you want to do an autopsy on them?
No.
Okay.
Unless there's suspicious circumstances. But, like, how do you know, like, if a old person dies of, I don't know what, but, like, yes, they're old. Like, yes, my granddaddy was 80 or whatever when he passed away.
You call him granddaddy too?
Yeah.
I had granddaddy.
Yeah, I had granddaddy and grandma, and then grandmother and papa, or papa and grandmother.
We have discussed this because I had grandmother and granddaddy.
Oh yeah, I like that combination. It goes better, but papa was weird. He insisted on, I think.
Yeah, my dad is now granddaddy to
my dad is also granddaddy to the nephews. By the way, happy birthday to Peyton, who is no longer my youngest nephew because of Tolly, but is also now 13. He's a teenager. Aww. And I wished him, I texted him this morning to say happy birthday. I was like, happy birthday, I can't believe, like, you're a teenager.
He's like, whatever.
This boy said, not yet, not till lunch. And I was like, what?
He's definitely a teenager.
He's like, I'm not a teenager until lunchtime. I was like, is that when you were born? Like, I should remember, because I was not a teenager. I was in my 20s when he was born. But he's like, yeah, I think so. I was like, okay, well, fine. I'll text you later at lunch. He's so funny.
Well, when you're a kid, like, I remember being like, I'm, 7 3/4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And he's of my sister's 2 children, he got her, like, sarcastic, dry sense of humor, and
Sassitude.
It's showing in the most delightful ways. Because he's also just, like, the kindest, like, sweetest little boy in the whole world. Okay. Last thing about cyanide.
Just don't ask him a dumb question.
He has a lot of snarky answers. Okay, last thing about cyanide is that sometimes the presence of cyanide can be detected by the smell of bitter almonds, but not everyone can detect the smell. So, Pishos was saying, like, it's lucky that I'm one of the people that can, because I, smelled this bottle and it smelled like almonds.
Kind of like how, I'm pretty sure not everyone can smell. You know how you eat asparagus and it makes your pee smell?
Uh-huh.
Not everyone can smell that.
Really?
And also, the chemical that's, like, in asparagus that causes your urine to smell is also one of the same chemicals within skunk spray.
Really?
To make it stink. Like, there's more to it than just that. Yeah. It's just... That's one of the chemicals that is found in skunk spray.
Interesting. Gross. Well, at the same time that Pishos was discovering that the Tylenol smelled like almonds, Dr. Kim had also begun to suspect cyanide poisoning, because he was, I think, doing that thing of like, well, what's every possible thing that it could be? And they didn't have the lab at the hospital to do this kind of test, but he went ahead and took blood samples from all 3 of the Janices and sent it out to get tested. He gets those tests back at 1 a.m. So it is now technically Thursday. And those reports say there are massive amounts of cyanide in all the blood. Like several times more than the lethal dose. So that's at 1 a.m. Around 3:15 a.m., Mary McFarland is pronounced dead. She's at Good Samaritan Hospital. And at 9:30 a.m., Mary Reiner is pronounced dead at Central DuPage Hospital.
So, everyone's dead.
Yes.
Well, except for Paula, because she just went home with her Tylenol, and we don't know anything about her yet.
Correct. We're getting to her. So by 10 a.m., the medical examiner's office is like, we're going to hold a press conference. And
do not take 2, because you will not be able to call us in the morning.
Correct. So they essentially say, all we have right now is that cyanide has been found in some Tylenol capsules. Do not take any Tylenol if you have it. And that's all we know right now. But just if you have Tylenol, don't take it. And so they got phone calls all day long, and Poison Control got phone calls all day long.
Of course.
Of people freaking out.
Like, I took Tylenol 3 hours ago.
Yeah, essentially. Or like, I took some Tylenol this morning, or I gave my kid some Tylenol like before I heard this or whatever.
Is your kid still vertical?
Yeah.
You're good.
Essentially what they said was, if you're able to call us, you're okay. Because if you had taken, cyanide-laced Tylenol, you wouldn't be able to call. You would be dead. Yeah. But don't take any more. Go ahead and just throw that out. By 3 o'clock that day, Johnson & Johnson recalled all of the Tylenol from the lot that had been identified on the Janice and Kellerman bottles. The following day, Friday, October 1st, the Attorney General has been called in now, because there's all of these happen in multiple counties. So Attorney General, I guess, is who has jurisdiction. They get state police involved, they get local police involved, and they get federal investigators involved. So,
well, again, it's a multi-county thing. It's poison, and a child has died.
Yeah.
And they're probably at this point worried that it's like potential terrorism.
Yes.
Like, this might be just a little test case for a wider, terrorist operation.
Yes. Also, I got my Janices mixed up because my next note says that Teresa Janice was taken off life support and pronounced dead at 1:15. So I must have meant earlier, because there's 3 Janices, I got them confused. Mm-hmm. Earlier when I said...
You did say that...
Stanley?
No.
I said Teresa was on life... Okay, well...
Yeah, you said the first, Adam.
Adam.
He died.
Mm-hmm.
And then Stanley, the brother, he died before he got to the hospital or at the hospital.
Yes.
Teresa was put on life support, and then you did mention that early in the morning, she died.
Okay. Okay.
Well, now, whether she died while on life support or was just taken off life support, I don't know. Is cyanide poisoning something you can recover from?
I think if you have not ingested too much,
I was about to say, if you have just
enough.
a super low dose.
Yes, I think there's, I don't want to say an antidote, but I did read that there's stuff that can kind of combat it, but it really depends on, there was no coming back for these people because they had taken way too much, more than the lethal dose.
Yeah.
But it's in some metals, and so I read all this stuff about, if you've been exposed, here's what you do. Take off everything that's been exposed to it. Wash yourself. When you're taking your stuff off, try not to pull it over your head. All sorts of stuff. So that indicates, I think, that, yes, if you catch it in time and you get it, I don't know. But
no guarantees.
Yes. Okay, so at this point, Friday afternoon, everyone has died, except for that we know of, except for Paula. But later that evening, her family called Chicago police to do a welfare check because they hadn't been able to reach her. She had missed dinner with her sister, and she had also missed her next outgoing flight. And at 5 o'clock, police entered her apartment, and they discovered her body just outside her bathroom with a Tylenol bottle still on the vanity. That evening, the mayor holds a press conference and announces that they are pulling all Tylenol from the shelves in Chicago, which is a great idea.
And everyone who has purchased Tylenol recently, bring it in.
Yes.
Bring it to the police station for testing.
Yeah, for real. By the following Tuesday...
Go ahead.
By the following Tuesday, Johnson & Johnson recalled all Tylenol products nationwide, which was 31 million bottles and $100 million worth of inventory. Because this had gone past Chicago. It had made national news. Everyone was freaking out about their Tylenol. No one wanted to take it. Johnson & Johnson also created a hotline for tips that people could call, and they posted a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. So, our investigation. So fairly quickly, they figured out a couple things about this poisoning situation. So the first thing is that they're not in order, but the first thing I wrote down is that the tampering of the capsules had to have been done within days of the poisonings because the cyanide would start to dissolve the plastic capsules, and none of the capsules were showing signs that had happened. So they have a brief relative timeline. Although the bottles all came from the same lot, they were likely tampered with after being put on the shelves in various stores. So they were it's probably not something that happened at the production plant. They narrowed down the places where they were found to within a 50-mile radius, which should have been comforting for the rest of the world or the rest of the country. All of them not all of them, but they came from different production plants. Sorry,
which again kind of furthers they were tampered with out there. So it's not a bad actor within the company or within the manufacturing plants. It's just
anyone.
It's some random civilian. Well, I mean, I guess that's scary for the public, but also at least we can still kind of trust when it leaves the factory.
Yeah, we can.
I don't know if that's any better, but...
So their leading theory at this point was that someone was going into stores, taking bottles off shelves, whether they were buying them or stealing them. They were taking them, putting cyanide in some of the capsules, and then returning them to the store or shelf. They came up with what I think is a pretty shaky profile. They said that it was likely a man in his 20s or 30s.
Okay, that doesn't seem shaky to me at all.
Well, correct, but based on what...
Throw in that he's a white man. Yes.
But, like, women be poisoning people. I mean, typically people who have wronged us, but...
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people theorize that this man had low self-esteem and that the poisonings were a way to, I guess, feel empowered or in charge.
That one's a little thin.
Yeah.
Not a psychologist, though, so... I don't know.
You are a scientist, though. Other people thought that he might have been targeting a specific person and either didn't care if random people were collateral or was using the random deaths to cover up the one intended death. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's really shaky, too.
I mean, unless there was a way that he could guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Like, unless he went into, like, Adam Janice's home and took his specific Tylenol bottle or took the bottle out of Mary's purse or whatever, you know, like, it's hard to guarantee that unless you're also probably breaking and entering or stealing personal property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, just with the facts and the way that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of these people, like, stopped on their way home and bought the bottle.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
The only, it was the single mom who had it in her purse at work. We don't know if she bought it on the way home or if she bought it or if maybe somebody gave it to her or something. So that's a maybe.
Right.
And then the little girl...
Her mom had bought it that day or the day before. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But they had no idea of knowing who in that household would be taking it, right?
Exactly.
Because, yeah.
So I don't see any potential, like, targets.
Yeah. So there was one person that suggested that this suspect had probably already killed themselves. I don't think that was a widely held belief. Also, I don't think that was based on anything other than just speculation
or wishful thinking.
Yeah. So the leading theory that they kind of ran with was this, quote, mad poisoner theory, which is, in my opinion, the most terrifying because this person that didn't or wouldn't have had a motive. And that makes it harder to track things down. So, no motive. Okay, so this makes it almost impossible for them to kind of hone in on a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason that this is hard is because it's 1982. There's not a lot of security cameras in stores. If there are, they're not monitoring customers. Nope. They're monitoring
the cash registers.
Also, a lot of people were paying cash, especially for like a small purchase. Mm-hmm.
Because back then, a bottle of Tylenol was not $12.
Correct. Yeah. They were like, I will take this $3 bottle of pain medication.
I think like $2 maybe.
Oh, God bless. It's the opposite of today where I'm like, this is $1.22. I will be paying with my debit card. Thank you. I have no cash. So the police started out with 1,200 leads, narrowed it, 1,200 leads and 400 suspects, and by the end of the year, they had narrowed it down to 20. Okay, so 2 of the more promising suspects that they found. The first one is Roger Arnold, who was 49. He was a dock worker at a Jewel Food warehouse. So Jewel Food, or Jewel Grocery, I don't know what it's called, was one of the places that some of the tainted Tylenol had been purchased. Okay, hold on to your pants, because this is weird. So the owner of a bar that he used to go to a lot, named Marty Sinclair, told police that he had overheard Roger talking about killing people with a white powder, and that his behavior had become increasingly erratic. Apparently his marriage was kind of falling apart and his behavior was also deteriorating. So police interview Roger. They find that he owns 5 unregistered guns. He's on the podcast they called him a DIY chemist. I wrote amateur chemist, but who knows. He did admit that at one point he had potassium cyanide in his possession. He also owned a book that contained instructions for how to make potassium cyanide. And allegedly, his wife, I couldn't find details on this, but in more than one place I saw that at one point his wife had gotten apparently violently ill after taking a Tylenol, like in the not too distant past.
So
to me, that sounds like a coincidence. Like maybe she just either had an allergic reaction or
maybe it was something else and it was unrelated to the Tylenol. That was just coincidental.
Yeah.
Also, kind of going back to the theory of there was one particular target in mind, and the others were, the red herrings to cover it up. So that, because like, if his wife were to die of cyanide poisoning after taking a Tylenol,
right,
people would be like, oh yeah, his marriage was falling apart. He probably did it. Also, a person dies, the first person you look at is the spouse,
obviously, especially
if it's a woman and her spouse is a male.
Well,
but it's not always like that. It's not always. I'm just saying, especially.
I was gonna say also on the.
If it's poisoning, on the flip side,
on the flip side of that, if it was a man and he died of poisoning, you should look at his wife.
Really look at his wife.
For sure.
For sure.
It goes both ways.
Oh, yeah. But, so it could be that he did have the intention of poisoning his wife with the Tylenol, and that's why he did the others as, the red herring covers tracks, and either he couldn't pull it off that she took the tainted Tylenol in time, or maybe they decided that they were going to try and work on things or whatever, and he just decided not to in the end.
Right. Yeah. Well, he was eventually cleared of any suspicion, which is also why I think it was a coincidence. But his reputation had been tarnished. They compared it to which I should have looked this up, because now I can't remember. There was like a bombing. It was an episode of a show that I didn't finish. Oh man, I'm gonna sound so stupid when I look back at what. Anyways, there's a bombing, and they like honed in on one guy who was like a security guard at the event, and they like basically told the public it was him. But it wasn't him, and he just kind of went down in history as, like, everyone remembered that he was the bomber, but he wasn't. So that was kind of the case with Roger. So that summer of 83, he is like, I'm going to kill Marty Sinclair because he ruined my life. Marty is the bar owner for people who don't
everyone
remember.
else thinks I'm a murderer, I might as well actually be one.
Yes. So he goes to the bar, mistakes a man named John Stanisha for Marty, shoots John, kills him, and is convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison. He served 15, and then he died in 2008. And he, like, readily admitted, he's like, I killed a innocent person. To be fair, Marty was also an innocent person.
Yes.
So, like, your original plan was still that. But he admitted, I guess at least what I did was wrong. I should be in jail for it.
So clearly not like a sociopath or psychopath, just a guy going through a really rough time.
Yeah.
Gets a lot worse and just
kind of reaches his breaking point.
Loses it for a second. And then immediately is like, oh,
yeah, at least
I acted rashly.
His preferred method of murder.
Yeah. So again, definitely
not like, poisoning. But speaking of sociopaths or psychopaths, hey everyone, it's Hannah. I wanted to quickly ask If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting the show in front of other listeners. If you listen on a platform that doesn't do reviews, please follow us on social media, like the show, or leave a comment. Thank you. We love you guys, and we hope you enjoy the show. There's also a man named James Lewis. He was 35, which is our age. Also, all these victims, I think, were younger than us.
Oh,
I'm just saying, we're getting old, and I don't love it.
I'm older than you.
Only by a year.
I know.
But I am coming to terms with, I'll be 34 in a month, and that is...
Actually, I like when you say how old you are, because then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm 35. Or I'm going to be 35. Like, that's how I can remember how old I am, is if you say something.
I often have to reference other people's ages by my own. For example...
I have to ask Shelton. They're like, how old are you? I'll look Sheldon be like, how old am I? I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember that Jarek is 2.5 years older than me. And so I'm like, okay.
I'm in between y'all.
Yeah. And he's a year... The reason I remember how old he is, he's a year younger than my sister. And then his siblings, the triplets, are 2 years younger than him, so they're a year younger than me. That's why I know how old everyone's turning. Back to James Lewis. Not younger than me. He's 35. He had mailed a letter, a slightly incriminating letter, to Johnson & Johnson in the days following the poisonings that essentially said, give me $1 million or I will continue killing people with poison.
So slightly incriminating might be an understatement, dear.
Well, yeah, but and here's the thing. Like, they've pulled all their product. How are you going to... They've stopped the ways that you're poisoning people. Unless... I mean, I guess you could do it some other kind of way. But anyways, he sends this letter. They pretty easily tie it back to him. So police investigate him. He either currently owned or used to own a book on poisoning. And in that book, they found his fingerprints on a page that related to cyanide, which seems circumstantial, but it's fine. He had a criminal record. So he'd previously been charged with mail fraud in 1981. And in 1978, he had been charged with murder. Because... Are you still holding on to your pants, by the way?
No, I'm holding on to the cord to stop the feedback.
In 1978, police found the dismembered body of one of his clients, because he was an accountant, in his attic. Just body parts that made up a whole body in his attic.
The same body?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all from the same body.
It's all from one body.
Yeah, all from one body.
Well, I mean, we've talked about some people who have done some things that, yes. I mean, I think they did have body parts enough to make up a whole body. They just were not all the same body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, attic? Is there a worse place to keep a dismembered body?
Well,
is your attic climate controlled?
I mean, not in the 70s, I'm sure.
I was going to say...
there are like finished attics. There are places that like it's called the attic, but it's really basically like a third floor.
Yeah.
It's just, legally, because there's no egress or whatever, you cannot call it a bedroom or something. Mm-hmm. So it could be, if you're keeping a body up there, it's likely what everyone thinks of when they think attic. But also, not everyone lives in the South, where the attic in the summer especially is,
I was gonna say, you know how
hotter than hell.
When you came over and I was like, we're keeping the fan on because I'm so hot. I'm pretty sure because we opened the attic for like 2 minutes so Jarrett could take some stuff up there, and the attic had been fully closed, whatever. I walked into our living room and it's like, oh, why does it feel like outside in here? Our air conditioning's on. And I'm like, oh yeah, we have the attic blowing.
We actually built a box over so we've got the pull down from the ceiling. So we pull it down, you unfold the ladder, you climb up, and then you have to push a piece of plywood that has a whole bunch of styrofoam, like, insulation stuff on it. So basically there's a frame around, like, so when you climb up, you have to step over the frame around the whole hole, and got a lid.
That's smart.
That helps, because it's in our bedroom.
Ooh. Oh, that's terrifying also.
Yeah. No, I've definitely laid awake at night having my anxiety thoughts of, like, okay, if somebody's in our attic and they start to try and come down out of the attic while we're sleeping, this is what I'll do.
Attics are so scary. At my parents' house, my bedroom was, or the attic was right outside my bedroom.
That's how it was in my dad's house.
And it was like attic, stairs, like, or like banister. So you had to make a turn and go to the stairs. And I used to hear, I mean, like, you know, like pipes or whatever. Certainly nothing like footsteps, because now I know what those sound like. But I had my plan, which was go out the front window, go down the roof of the porch. Hopefully my mom's van was parked in the driveway. Jump on the van. It would catch my fall.
Solid plan.
Solid plan, right? I don't think enough about my escape plan in this house. Because my only plan now is me assuming that I'm in the bedroom when something happens. And to hide.
Waking up jerk.
Well, yeah. But to hide on the opposite far end of the bed with the shotgun. And that's it. Although I have several windows in my bedroom. I could probably just go out one of them.
Yeah, we can't use most of our windows.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, so they find this body in the attic. You might be wondering, how is he still walking around, able to send extortion letters to large pharmaceutical companies? Ultimately, the cause of death of this dismembered person could not be determined, and some of the evidence, apparently most of the incriminating evidence, had been obtained illegally. So they dismissed the charges. So there's just some man that was murdered, probably by James Lewis, and was dismembered and kept in his attic, and his family just did not get justice. They were just like, oops.
I mean, the alternative might, I don't know about worse, but just as bad. A man is either murdered or dies or something. His body is found by James, brought back to his house, and then dismembered for whatever reason, and then kept in the attic. So, I mean,
neither one of those are good.
No.
Neither one of those make James seem like a good person.
Or a mentally stable one.
Unless his wife was doing all of it.
Like, with what's-his-face, who shot the dude at the bar? Roger. At least...
We could kind of follow.
At least he... I mean...
We could connect the dots there.
He just wanted to get revenge, and he shot somebody and killed them. And that was it. He's like, you're dead. We're done. He didn't take him home to dismember him. When you start taking people home, whether you're the one that killed them or not, to dismember them, you got some mental issues, and they need to be addressed.
Agreed. Yes. I'm gonna guess that didn't happen with James.
He's also sending threatening letters.
Yeah, and
whether there was a dismembered body in his attic or not, he's got some mental issues.
Yes. And when police interviewed him, they said, because he denied having anything to do with the poisonings, but they said, okay, well, if you did, O.J. Simpson, how would you have done it? And he gave a really detailed answer that was essentially kind of what they thought, which is, I would take the bottles off the shelf and put them in my pocket and go back to my house, and then I would take the capsules apart and pour out some of the medicine and replace it with cyanide and replace it and then put it back on the shelves. But, like, I'm sure he went into detail of, like, and then I would wait, several days, and then I would have it in my inside of my jacket pocket so that no one could hear this and this. And I would make sure that I walked around the store for a minimum of, he gave too many details.
Mm-hmm. Way too many details.
Yeah. He did admit to writing and sending the extortion letter, but he said he really just wanted
the money and was going to use ride the coattails of this tragedy.
Well, I don't even know if he wanted the money, because he said he was trying to embarrass his wife's former employer, which was a travel agency, because they had either gone out of business or she had lost her job or something, and they didn't give her her last paycheck. And he was big mad about that. And so in the extortion letter, he was like, give me $1 million to this bank account. And it was a bank account connected to the travel agency. And so he told police, he's like, I just wanted them to look bad when they received $1 million from Johnson & Johnson. Which, God, that scared me.
Oh, it's the candy.
It's not even a scary episode. Why am I so jumpy?
Because we're talking about unhinged people who've murdered people and kept their dismembered bodies in their attic.
No. So
just walking around free.
Yeah. Well, he's not
writing extortion letters.
I will say, spoiler alert, lives for way longer than he should have. So they determine that James and his wife were in New York during the poisonings and during the time that police believed that the actual tampering happened, which is annoying, because it cleared, it means it wasn't him. He was charged with the extortion. He served 12 years. He was released in 1995. In 2004, he was charged with the rape and kidnapping of a woman in Cambridge. Sir,
Oh, the justice system is so just.
I mean, I get that you can't, put someone away for life for extortion. Maybe if he also probably killed someone before that.
Someone who was convicted of mail fraud, someone who had also murdered a person. Yeah.
But,
did you ever see the movie Minority Report?
No.
So, I feel like I've talked about it before on the podcast, but essentially they've got these people who are able to see the future.
Uh-huh.
And they're called precogs. They're precognitive.
Okay.
And they get hooked up to these machines that's very Matrix-y in a way. And they, basically have a seizure and, will give details about, the victim and the location.
Uh-huh.
And so the police can then go arrest the criminal before the crime is committed. So they get there, just in time, as the person's, raising the gun or about to go into the room to, stab someone. They stop them and they arrest them for a crime that they were about to commit. And so it's been so long since I've seen this movie. This is, a late 90s, maybe early 2000s movie. It could be a 90s movie. Tom Cruise.
Oh.
And Colin Farrell.
Oh. Not who I would have guessed at all.
Also, Tim Blake Nelson was in there.
Who?
He was in Holes. That's how I always think of him.
Oh, it's Mr. Sir.
Yeah. Yep. And Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Okay.
That's the other one that I think of. Those are the two that are my go-to.
Nice.
So, anyway, again, it's been so long since I've seen this movie, but, it was it was a fun action movie, but also a bit of a think piece in that, is the reason I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
22 years later. 22 years
Stop. That was not 22 years ago.
The fact that I can remember things from 22, that I'm old enough for...
I was going to say, the fact that we were old enough 22 years ago to be experiencing pop culture.
Anywho, it's times like this when and we've talked about criminals before who are clearly they are violent criminals. They have a history and they either escape justice or their only put away for short periods.
Yeah.
And or some sort of something intervenes that puts them back out on the street, without any other kind of like treatment or intervention or anything like that, only for them to turn around and commit some really heinous crime or multiple heinous crimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know we can't just lock certain people up and throw away the key, and we can't just, innocent until proven guilty. Agree. But,
well, and
I don't know. Sometimes I'm just like,
yeah, because it's like, I know
that hindsight is 20/20 thing.
And it's like that judge or that jury or whoever had to disregard the knowledge that he probably definitely killed and dismembered someone, because legally he didn't. Like, under the law,
right,
he hadn't been charged with that, and probably can't be charged with that because of double jeopardy. But I get what you're saying, and not to bring up more Alcatraz stuff, but it's relevant to everything. But
says you.
It's relevant all the time. But Teddy, our boy on the wall, he was, again, if you didn't listen to all 6 episodes, he was convicted of armed robbery when he was 17, and the judge sentenced him to death, which was not something he should have done, but he said he's violent, he's a repeat offender, I believe that he's going to escalate to murder, I'm going to nip it in the bud. And society said, you can't actually do that, sir.
I'm going to murder him before he murders other people.
Exactly. And so they overturned it or whatever, and he got 15 years. And during that sentence, he did murder someone. It was his cellmate, who maybe was trying to sexually assault him, but I imagine that judge read that in the paper.
Like, I told you so.
He did that thing that you do with your hands where you... Yeah. He's like, I knew it!
My flap my fingers, or flap my hand, and my fingers snap.
Yeah. He went to work the next day and was like, who called it?
I told you.
Exactly.
I ain't gonna say I told you so, but hell yay.
Well, so 2004, the victim in this case didn't want to testify. This says refused to testify. I don't like that wording. Didn't want to testify. And so the charges were dropped. And James lived out his life and was alive until this time last year. He died July of 2023 of natural causes.
Look,
and like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, so he didn't do this, but he did a lot of other bad stuff. And this is just how we know about him.
I hope that there was... The last victim was the last victim.
Oh, yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, with his history, it's unlikely.
It's unlikely.
And I just... Like, I understand that not everyone feels that they are in a position that they can stand up for themselves.
Yep.
And it sucks that
yeah,
because yeah, it's like, yeah, no, I can't stand up for myself, and you try and be like, well, what about all of the other potential future victims?
Yeah.
If you testify, you could put him away, you could protect other people.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's protecting me?
Yeah,
so like
I can never ever blame a victim of sexual assault for not either coming forward or choosing to prosecute or choosing to like.
Yeah, it's like, it's one of those like, it's a knee jerk to be like, why didn't you say something?
Yeah,
and it's like, no, I understand.
Yeah,
and it sucks. Like, there need to be safeguards. Like, there needs to be a way to ensure that people can stand up for themselves and seek justice.
I was watching I think it's on Netflix, and I think it's called Trial by Media. And it's about cases where essentially the media kind of
fully influences the verdict. Yeah.
And one of them, I think it was in the 80s, was this awful case where this woman was in a bar. She had met her friend for a drink in a bar, and I don't know, her friend left before her. She stayed to finish her drink, and she ended up essentially being like gang raped by multiple people. So there were like multiple witnesses, multiple people involved.
Mm-hmm.
And she, in my opinion, very bravely came forward and reported it. And there was this trial, and it was a televised trial. And for whatever reason, there was some kind of loophole. They released her name to the public, and just watching the interviews of the way people thought then of
she was asking
for it. Well, what was she
doing
wearing?
What was she wearing? What was she doing at a bar?
Why was she at a bar by herself? How much did she have to drink? Like, so many people just shitting on this woman and essentially saying that she deserved to or wanted this to happen. And it made my skin crawl. So, and like,
well, what's disgusting is that rhetoric is still alive and well today.
It's so bad. And like, thankfully it's not as like, people I think are at least a little bit more quiet about those opinions. Mm-hmm. But like, just the fact that like, that was a time when my parents were adults, you know, like,
as opposed to what they are today.
Well, I mean, like,
have they reverted?
They weren't.
Back to
it's
children?
Not like my parents were children back then. It's like, no, they were fully grown adults. Mm-hmm. You know, they were able to probably remember when that happened. And I don't think any of the people were. Well, maybe they were convicted, but her life just was over.
She probably had to change her name.
She moved. She had to move out of what was essentially the place where she grew up and wanted to be. And then she developed either a substance abuse or a drinking problem, and she passed away in a car accident that was caused by that, like a couple years later. Very upsetting.
This whole episode is upsetting.
I'm so sorry.
And we're not even done yet.
Well, my last section is the part that says silver lining ? So we're going to end on a good note, maybe.
Is this the birth of the tamper-proof packaging?
Yes. This is Johnson & Johnson doing, for once, not specific to Johnson & Johnson. This is a huge corporation for once doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. So they took drastic measures apart from destroying $100 million worth of inventory.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that sounds like a huge hit. But if they hadn't done that, that would have completely disintegrated all public trust in the company. The company would be done.
Yeah,
so
and
they can handle it's a big hit, I'm sure, especially in the 80s.
But also, no one's paycheck was probably getting smaller because of that.
At least none of the CEOs.
Yeah.
It might have been a really big hit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, the company is still around today.
Yes,
so.
And like they had dropped very dramatically in public opinion. Like people were like, you know, one lady said she didn't take over-the-counter medicine for 2 years after this because she just didn't know what to trust. And to be fair, which I didn't include this part, but there were a lot of copycat situations out there. And at that point, a lot of stuff was easily tampered with.
So when I first heard this story, I don't hope I'm not jumping on a point here. But the way that it was explained of how it was done and the whole tamper-proof packaging is before this, the bottles were just sealed with like a rubber stopper. Mm-hmm. And the way that some of these, I don't know if it was this particular case or it might have been a copycat or whatever, because there are a couple different stories that I have heard. Yeah. Someone would take a syringe. They would go into the store. Mm-hmm. They'd have the syringe of cyanide in their pocket. And they'd grab a bottle, just stick the syringe through the rubber stopper. Mm-hmm. And that was that. Done.
Yeah. Well, and I actually thought of this because I got some new face, it's like makeup removing balm or moisture, whatever. I got it today and I opened it today to wash my face, and there wasn't like sometimes lotions will come with like that foil seal.
A lot of times they say do not use if seal is broken or whatever.
This one just didn't have one. To be fair, it didn't look, it was like peanut butter. Like you can tell if someone's stuck their finger in there. But I thought for just a second, I was like, what if someone tampered with my Pond's cooling whatever the fuck I got?
My cold cream.
It is cold cream, I think. It is. It worked really well, by the way.
Know how I know we're old?
Because we're using Pond's cold cream. And coming home at 5 o'clock and immediately taking a shower. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, you're correct that before this, you could go into the store and take a Tylenol from the bottle while you were shopping. But by early 1983, so like, just a few months after this happened, which by the way, this happened right before Halloween. Halloween was fucking ruined that year for so many people. Like, my kid, had it been me, I'd be like, no, you're not getting candy from strangers. Are you kidding?
We've also done that episode.
We have. So Johnson & Johnson changed the way that they packaged their product. So first it came in boxes now, and those boxes, little tiny cardboard boxes, were glued shut. So like you could tell, it's like a cereal box. You can tell when someone's opened it. And then they had a plastic seal around the cap of the bottle, so you can't just take that off. And then they had the foil seal. So once you broke into, it's very annoying these days, but like when you understand why it had to be that way, you're like, fine, I guess I can deal with ripping all this plastic off of my tiny bottle of Excedrin.
Yeah, and I think at most people probably, like when they're opening a new bottle, probably aren't thinking like, wow, God, this is such a hassle, and complaining because like this is just the way things are.
Yeah.
And
it's only a hassle if they don't put that little tab on there for you to pull the foil off. I don't know what that is.
But it's just another instance of somebody ruining it for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, true. But
our life is just a little bit harder now because of this one asshole out there.
Yeah. But this did, like, all of this became, like,
standard.
Industry standard. In that same year, in 1983, the Tylenol bill, as it was called, was passed, which made tampering with goods a federal offense. Love when things are made federal offenses.
Doesn't stop anyone.
Doesn't stop anyone. And
it allows us to punish them harsher.
Yes.
More harshly?
More harshly.
There we go.
By 1989, the FDA established guidelines to make all products tamper-proof. So now it's, like, required. They also introduced the caplet to replace the capsule. So before, when this was happening, it was that little plastic capsule. Think Osmosis Jones, middle millennial babies, that you could take apart and literally, if you wanted to pour out the powder or whatever was in it.
Those.
Yeah, they do. But they're now in tamper-proof packaging. But you could take, I mean, this...
That's what I do with, I got probiotics. So we had some probiotics for Walker, and they came in the capsules.
Yeah.
And so I would just
make yogurt
open
with
them up. Well, I would pour them in his milk.
To make yogurt?
No.
Oh.
It's just probiotics instead of taking a pill.
Oh.
I would just open and pour out the good stuff.
Because you can do that and pour probiotics onto milk and then let it sit for a couple days and it'll turn into yogurt.
Yeah, no, he would just drink it.
Oh. I mean, it's not good yogurt, but it is yogurt. You can also apparently just add existing yogurt to boiled milk. I watched a TikTok video on it. It's not appealing to me. I'm going to continue spending $2 on vanilla flavored Greek yogurt at the store.
I'm going to continue not caring much for yogurt until I decide that, you know what, I really want yogurt. And then
go on a yogurt.
Be obsessed with yogurt for like 3 weeks and then not touch it for 2 years.
That's where our household is right now. We're in our yogurt era. Kelly's loving it because she gets the leftovers. Okay, so they went from using a capsule to a caplet, which is now like the coated caplet that we take. Think ibuprofen. It's
tablet.
Well, they called it a caplet, so I don't know.
I mean, I know what they're talking about specifically in regards to Tylenol. There is still like a weird coating on it. But yeah, it's basically a tablet.
Yeah.
Now.
So the Tylenol murders, as they have come to be known, are largely considered the first act of domestic terrorism in the United States because essentially it just created terror.
Yeah, mass hysteria.
And apparently mass cyanide poisoning is still a huge risk in terms of terror attacks. And here's a fun quote. Cyanide fits the description of an ideal terrorist weapon as it is plentiful, readily available, does not require special knowledge for use, is capable of causing mass confusion, panic, and social disruption, and requires large quantities of specific resources to combat. And I'm just going to say, if you have any kind of anxiety, don't go to the CDC and read these kinds of articles about how easy it would be for, and apparently some country has threatened to use cyanide in some kind of mass attack. How easy would it be? It's terrifying.
Well, I'm now feeling a lot better about the whole imminent move to the mountains thing.
The last thing I will say is that no one has ever been charged with the murders. They did reopen the case semi-recently and did DNA testing, and that did not match Roger Arnold or James Lewis. And still to this day, a motive has not ever been determined. There was just some person in 1982 who wanted to watch the world burn and did just that, but in the process changed the industry standards for packaging of consumer products, which is good, but sucks that it has to be done.
Yeah, I mean, before him, we didn't need tamper-proof.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, it's great that we have tamper-proof stuff, and I'm like, oh,
but
it actually sucks that we need it, because there should not be people out there who want to poison your Tylenol because you're taking Tylenol because you already feel crappy. You don't need to take more, or you don't need to feel worse.
I guess you should be careful when you say, "Ugh, I feel like death. I'm gonna go take a Tylenol."
Oh gosh. To be fair, I almost never take Tylenol. I always take. Well, acetaminophen stopped working for me, I think, at some point when I had a year of headaches. It just didn't work. So I just take ibuprofen for everything.
Same.
And I take way too much.
Same.
They're going to cut me open when you specifically ask for an autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And just be like, there's just ibuprofen sitting in her belly. It never got absorbed, which is why her
recrystallized,
Yeah.
And now she's just
So
creating her own tablets. Well, if you want to see pictures from tonight's episode, you can check out our Facebook and Instagram. Just search the Tales We Tell podcast. If you want to see pictures but don't do the social media, check out our website, thetaleswetellpodcast.com. And if you want to support us and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, check out our Redbubble store. Search The Tales We Tell. We've got a couple different logos, and you can get that on anything. If you want to support us and you don't need the stuff except, early access, commercial-free listening, sometimes some fun bonus content, stickers, love notes, and our undying love and affection, you can become patrons at patreon.com. Search The Tales We Tell. Yep. And last little reminder, we're on YouTube, so even if you don't want to listen through the YouTubes, please just go and like and subscribe.
Yes.
And would show your support that way. It's the cheapest, freest, easiest, fastest.
Yep.
And it's still very, very meaningful.
And we will probably film, like we did last time, film the live episode and eventually put that up on YouTube so you can
There will be actual video.
Yes. And there are a couple of videos on there, I think mostly of me.
Oh, really?
Of like, I don't know. It was.
I glossed through it, and I went on so that I specifically could subscribe. So I am a subscriber.
Nice. I'm not because it's my account.
Yeah, it can't be.
But I do check it, and Morgan left a nice comment to combat the mean comment that we had earlier. Oh, I meant to say, I said the name of. I just want to correct. I said the name of that person wrong because I was remembering it wrong. It was Robert Wone. I just want to correct myself because we were specifically accused of making light of his death, and I felt bad that when I was combating that, I said his name wrong. So anyway, I'm probably gonna kill this bottle of wine when you leave, as we have killed the giant container of biscuits that you brought.
It wasn't a giant container. There was 4 biscuits.
Medium-sized container. I thought there were 5 biscuits. Was there 4?
There might have been 5.
I was gonna say, I thought I ate 2 and a tiny bit of the third one. Anyways,
I only had 2, so it might have just been 4.
okay. We were eating Cheddar Bay Biscuits this whole time.
It was just 4 because originally I was gonna bring 3, 1 for each of us, and leave 1 for Jarek.
And then you said, screw
And then when I
Jarek.
was trying to put the other ones in, like the leftovers at home, I was like, well, this one doesn't fit. All right, I can bring 4.
Perfect.
And then I opened it up and we started eating them. And
You
then we
opened it
didn't
up
stop.
and the room filled with the scent of garlic and cheese, and
Yes.
we just couldn't stop. If there were more, I'd be eating them still.
There are more at my house.
Oh, anyways, I'll maybe try to do a lighter episode next. I don't know. No promises. Just show up next week and see what you get. Until then,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.